whatever argument that you have to use to reject the mythological stories, you have to reject tall tales, you have to reject fairy tales, you don't do that. Why not?
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud, and we are the Core Four back again today. Well, the four of us in Martin's notebook. Martin, what you writing there?
All your
thoughts? Secret, top secret.
I'm not going to divulge it until just the right time.
We can't wait. Yeah. How is everybody?
Great.
Good.
A little brain dead from teacher training, trying to get school started again.
Because we start back next week. Yeah.
Yes. College school starts Monday.
Yeah, Tanya's brain dead. I'm just tired. I went and worked in the warehouse yesterday.
Oh. This is our busiest time of year.
And all of our seasonal help is leaving because of school starting.
Yes.
And so I was over there yesterday. And then last night, my dog decided to wake me up at 2 a.m.
Oh, no.
Which normally...
Was there a coyote?
No, he just wanted to go out, I think.
Oh.
Needed to go out.
An inside dog, not a guard dog.
It's an inside dog. Oh, no. No, that was the night before. I got a call at 9:30 at night that my dogs were going crazy, my guard dogs. So I went out there, and then right before I got there, they calmed right down. I'm like, I think it was deer walking down the fence line.
Oh, it could have been. Or they chased off something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Never a dull moment on Dancing Acres Farms?
Never a dull moment, and August is just busy everywhere.
Busy.
Everywhere.
Yes.
In my work life and my farm life.
We need mid-September to come.
That's right.
Yes. And fair life. I've been to the fair.
Yeah, Tanya,
I've been to the fair.
Yeah.
Have you been to the fair?
You know, I haven't been to the fair. What I have always wanted to do, I keep telling my wife this, I want to take my grandchildren to the livestock show.
Oh, sure.
I used to love those when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And I probably missed them by now. I don't know.
You did.
Yeah, I always miss them.
They may be still going on some. I know
the fair?
Danette's Chicken won.
Yes, Danette's Chicken won like grand championship of bantams in the fair.
Yes. So I know the chicken show's over.
You know the chickens.
Yes, chickens are over, but they should be
cows.
bringing in pigs now, and I think the dairy cows are probably over, but the beef cattle are coming in.
Oh yeah, you could do
and
the
the
beef
horses.
cattle.
They're still doing the horse show all week long.
Well, I raised pigeons when I was young.
Did you?
And the reason I started raising pigeons is because my dad took us to the Los Angeles County Fair, and they had the pigeons out, and there were all these different kinds of. I was totally taken aback by all this. So I bought. So I was in Palm Springs. We were vacationing in Palm Springs. We find this baby pigeon on the ground. It had fallen out of a nest in one of the palm trees. So we took it back to the hotel. We got some baby food. That's the only thing we could think of. I brought it back home. I raised that pigeon. It was this beautiful white female pigeon, and she had a gray tail. She was really pretty.
What was her name?
Her name was Pidge. and so Pidge was lonely. You know, she's just one pigeon in the cage. And so I went. There was a pigeon.
So you went and kidnapped another pigeon?
Oh, in Wilmington, California, just down the road. Okay. And my mom drove me out there, and I bought this fantail pigeon. They're the ones with this big chest and the fantail. And I bought him, and I brought her back.
Him back.
And they hit it off. And they had babies, and pigeons mate for life.
I didn't know that.
Yes, yes, just like doves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I raised Pidge, and I can't remember what I named him.
That's great.
Oh yeah.
I guess it was Stinky.
Well, pigeons don't stink a lot.
It's not. If you change
stink.
the bedding frequently,
yeah,
I mean,
it's not.
I don't know if bedding is the right word for pigeon.
Yeah,
bottom of the cage, but
I'll tell you what. I came in here not knowing up from down, but my day has turned around because I heard your story about pigeons and Danette's Chicken won at the state fair.
That's
my
right.
day has gotten so much better.
Yes.
But I will say, childhood memories, like my grandmother and my aunt used to take us every year to the fair. And walking into those animal barns is one of my, the smell is one of my favorite childhood memories.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I used to take Pidge. I'd get on my bicycle. I'd put her on my shoulder. And I'd drive around the neighborhood.
Oh, and she would just sit there.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Martin and Pidge.
That's sweet.
Kind of sounds like a band from the 70s.
Martin and Pidge.
Not a band I'd go see.
Oh, man. Well,
it's only downhill from here.
I know. Between the state fair and everything else, what are we reading these days?
I'm reading, and this is, again, Catherine Cornett gives me the recommendations for books, which I'm always thrilled to have because she and I do have the same taste in reading. But this time I'm really irritated. And I told her yesterday I was really irritated because she suggested The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower, which I have never heard of. And she said, I am loving them. There's like 8 of them. There are going to be more. I've read them all and I love them all the way through. Well, so I ordered the first one, $10. I'm thinking, gosh, that's a cheap book. 120 pages. So I started it Friday morning. By Saturday morning, I was thinking, I'm going to make it through 2 breakfasts with this book. But I was into it by then. I needed to know what happened, so I ordered the next 3. Well, I said, Catherine, this is costing me a fortune.
Yeah.
Why? There's no omnibus. They're not collected in any way. Like you literally just have to buy them all new. And then she said, well, I've got a few of them. And I said, well, now that I'm invested, I feel like they're real pretty.
Yeah.
And so maybe I just want to own them.
Well, you do
But
now.
anyway, that's what I'm reading.
But is it like, what's it about?
It's in the late 1800s, like 1883, 1886. And it's just the journals of this girl living back then she owns a house that her uncle has the right to live in until he dies. And she has no money. But she's there living after she gets out of this prep school that didn't teach her anything. She wants books. She wants to educate herself, and he made her live in the garret.
Oh.
And I mean, it's just her life with her, the people that she comes across, and they rent out another little part of the house that has a garret on the other side. And so she and the man that lives in the other side are exchanging notes back and forth. I mean, there's a ghost. It's haunted. It's just like a young girl's journals.
But this is fiction being written
It's
today.
fiction. Yes,
Right.
being
Back
written
What's the name
today,
of the-
very current.
What's the name of the book?
The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon.
I had not heard of that.
Well, me neither. And I'm glad to be reading them, but they are expensive because they're new.
And they're
Hardback?
small.
No, they're not
They're not
hardback.
hardback.
They're small, but now numbers 3 and 4 are like 200 pages instead of 120. But I did buy another $10 one that is 120 pages, and I've about finished with it after 2 days. I mean,
You go fast, yeah.
well, and it's just it's a story, so it's fast reading.
Paul, any time to read?
Well, I was making great progress on The Human Factor by Graham Greene last time we recorded, and then I left it in my sister's van.
Oops.
And so that really kind of slowed me down there. But
Doesn't your sister live close to you?
she does, but I was on a roll. And when you slow the momentum down and you've picked up another book in the meantime,
Oh.
I started Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne.
Oh, what do you think?
It's wonderful.
I was considering that for a read aloud if something went out of. You think for 6th grade? 7th?
Okay, can I make a comment? on Jules Verne?
Probably.
Yes, make a comment.
Probably. Well, let me just say that I thought I had read an abridged, like the Great Illustrated Classics
Right.
version as a kid. And when I picked it back up again, I was, I'm going to read the original thing. And I thought, what is this just going to be the story of him going around the world? I mean, it's much more interesting. It's much more an adventure tale than I thought it would have been. And just like trying to get around the world in 80
Right.
days. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing I noticed about Jules Verne, of course, Jules Verne, French, and he's writing like turn of the century, right? I mean, very early in terms of modern literature. And he's still writing in that sort of age of adventure and age of exploration. And so what I noticed about his books is that they, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, there's not much of a plot. Just a bunch of things happen.
Yeah.
But it's what's, I guess, the appeal of it, particularly to young people, is that they're discovering, in his books, they're discovering things that hadn't been known before. It's just, it's just the wonder of the events and the things
it's
they
episodic.
encounter.
It's
very
not,
episodic.
It's not a novel, as you would normally
Don't
expect.
try to analyze the plot structure because there probably isn't one.
Right.
But is it like, I would say that Sabatini could be the same thing, except that, yeah, it's episodic, but
There's a
the
definitive plot.
characters are, well, it's like a,
Not,
I mean, there's
not
a
like
plot, but
the
it's like an
Fortunes of Captain
adventure.
Blood. Those,
Captain Blood?
No, the Fortunes of Captain
The
Blood.
Black Swan?
The second one is very episodic.
Mhm.
There's
Okay.
like 4 different stories.
Well, the
in
Black
that book.
Swan is not that way. The ones I've read are.
but even Scaramouche, I mean, it's got a plot, but it's very simple.
Right. And that's not so. It's not one of my favorite Sabatini's. Is because of that.
But the characters show, especially Captain Blood, such nobility
Mhm.
and integrity, and what it really means to be a soldier, and so that to me is just as important as a plot line. So even if the plot is light, does this have characters that are teaching moral lessons?
Let me get to the end, because the main character, Phineas Fogg, he's a very fastidious kind of person. And it's all about him winning this bet, right?
Right.
But then you have to see how he deals with the local people, with this new valet that he hired the day he takes this bet, and that sort of thing. So I don't yet know exactly how it's all going to shake out.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Martin?
Well, I'm still reading The Idiot by Dostoevsky, which I am enjoying. I got the newer translation by Pavir, and I can't remember the
Yeah, it's his wife.
Oh, okay.
She's
Yeah.
Russian.
Okay, yeah, no,
That's why you can't
is much
remember
better.
a name. It's very big.
I mean, yeah, and I think Dostoevsky's really suffered from bad translators.
I do too.
Yeah. So this is well translated. I'm reading that, and then I got this email from Andrew Pudawa the other day, and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do next year for our discussion of literature that we have. We did that here at the summer. Did you see the reviews of that?
No.
Oh,
I told you
need
where to find them, though.
I'm going to copy you and send them to you.
Oh, God. Obviously, they're good.
So we got to have a different theme every year. So next year it's going to be dystopias and utopias.
Oh, I hate dystopias.
I know, and this is not my thing either, but he really wants to do them. So I said, okay. But I've read some of them, 1984 and Brave New World, but there's all these other ones on there that we're going to do that I have not read, that I'm going to have to read, like 4 or 5 books, like The Giver. There's another real popular one in recent years.
The Hunger Games?
The Hunger Games,
Oh,
which I started and did not
Martin.
like. Well, but these are, we're discussing them not because they're necessarily good books,
Yes.
because they're influential books and we get to comment on them.
Okay.
So, and then like Thomas, who did Utopia? Thomas More did Utopia, which I remember trying to read and not being impressed by it, but we'll do that. And then he's got one that he really likes, Hermann Hesse, Magister Ludi.
I have not
Which
heard
I
of
was
haven't
this.
very
heard of that
influential
either.
when he
I've
read
heard
when he was
I
in
thought
high
it was
school.
Hermann Hesse. Is it Hesse?
Well, I don't know I don't know. I say Hesse, but it might be Hesse. It's Hesse.
I say Hesse.
Whatever, however Germans pronounce that. And so, which is one of his favorite books of all time. So, and I really have wanted to read that, so it'll give me an excuse to at least read that one.
And it's a dystopian, or is it a utopia?
Well, yes, it's a dystopian novel, but I don't know much about it, so I can't comment.
Well, you have a lot to tell us and report back over the next couple.
Yeah, and it's
a
good.
lot to
Yeah,
do.
I mean, because first we did like Anna Karenina and Tolstoy and all these. That was our first one we did 2 years ago. And then
Did
we
you
did difficult, painful books last year.
Did you
And-
finish Tom Jones?
No, I haven't. I had to lay it aside because I have to reason to read the Dostoevsky.
So this book that I'm reading, the Unselected Journals, she at one point she really wants to get a library of books because she had to sell her father's library of books in order to be able to go to school. And then when she got to school, it was a girls' prep school, and she learned how to sew instead of Latin and Greek, which she wanted to learn. So at one point she makes a bet with a young man, and she says, "Well, if I win, you have to bring me a book, but not Tom Jones." And so I wondered, I thought of you when I read that. I wondered if you,
I was enjoying it. I read the very first part. I was enjoying it. And I mean, it has a lightness to it from the narrator, the way the narrator is writing this. It's sort of this funny, there's a little bit of comic aspect to it, which I did not expect in a book that old, but we'll see.
Update. Well, we don't have a mailbag question to answer today, or I'm sorry, we don't have a question to answer today from a listener because we are saving those up for a mailbag episode coming.
Have y'all
soon.
found her a mailbox? She's not going to do a mailbag episode without a mailbox.
That was my deal. I want an actual mailbox, or maybe like, how Santa has a bag of gifts, that I want
So
something.
we're going to get very visual on this show.
She wants a mailbox.
Where people can hear the envelope opening. Wouldn't that be great?
The email envelope.
You apparently do. Yeah.
Jess, I will tell you, my mailbox recently got obliterated on my street, so I went and bought a new one. You can get them as cheap as $20.
Okay.
They're not expensive.
Amazon.
Well, it's on Kuiper's list to get just a mailbox.
It doesn't have, it could just be something representative. You don't want to feel
we got the video guys. They can come up with something,
digital.
And you can
Come
see
on,
the
video guys. Mailbox.
Yeah, it'd be.
We'll see.
No, we're all about the tangible and the real. Right, Martin?
That's right.
So we're going to bring a real mailbox and set it down in here?
Yeah,
That's what Jess wants. I think she should get it.
I was hoping for it.
And is she going to take it out of the mailbox?
That's my plan.
She doesn't. She doesn't request a lot,
I just want a mailbox for the mailbag episode.
Yeah.
but she really does want this.
I know.
So maybe we'll have to change it to a mailbox episode instead of a
Now
mailbag
we've got
episode.
drama.
But so that means since we're not going to do a mailbag episode until Jessica gets a mailbox, then keep sending your questions.
Please write us your questions. We would love to hear them. We have some good ones, but we can take many more. So please write podcast at memoriapress.com, and we would love to answer your question. Put it in the mailbox and take it right back out again. It's going to be great. We'll see how that cookie crumbles. I don't know. But on to today's topic. We are answering a big question, and that is, why do we read the pagan authors? There is a stream of thought out there that we have heard, and at least I hear fairly often, that some Christians don't feel like they should be reading the pagan or secular thinkers. We believe that those authors are incredibly valuable, particularly if we are hoping to read and know all that's been thought and said in the Western tradition. But I do think it's a fantastic question to answer and to talk about. Is it, Plato's wisdom or Paul's letters? Can you have both, one or the other? So we got this idea from an article on our website from our founder, Cheryl Lowe, and it's called, what's the title of it? Why Should Christians Read the Pagan Classics? It's excellent, and I commend it to you. You can read the whole article, or we also broke it down in parts, and I'm sure we'll link it on the page here, or the show notes. But to kick us off, I think, Martin, I'd like your help defining, what do we mean by pagan?
Well,
Are we talking about...
I was going to throw that question out. What do we mean by pagan?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful to start with. Are we talking about just purely secular people or non-religious writing? What are we talking about?
Or people before Christ.
Well,
Exactly.
Chesterton made the distinction between a secularist and a pagan. He said, secularist is a person who doesn't have any gods, and a pagan is a person who has about half a dozen. The term secular just means non-religious. Mm-hmm. Now, the term pagan is a little bit of an ambiguous term because are you talking about the religious pagans that, you're talking about the gods of ancient Rome, you're talking about the mythologies, all that, or are you talking about the philosophers who were themselves also religious? And because you got two different kinds of ideas going on there.
Wait a minute. You've confused me. The philosophers who were religious, why would you call them pagans?
You're talking about the ancient Greek and Roman philosophers that are pagans themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Plato,
participated in the pagan religion.
Okay, pagan religion. When you said they were religious, I thought, are you talking about philosophers post-Christ?
all those would presumably come under the label pagan. But,
even though many of them are critical of the pagan religion, but they still
aspects of the pagan religion.
aspects of it, but they're still participating in it as a communal, a part of their communal life.
And even Plato and Aristotle, refer to the gods and refer to God sometimes, and in the positive, and it doesn't, it doesn't just not matter to them, but their focus is on abstract thought and what a human being through his own reason can know. So you have some different things going on here when you're using the word, and they can overlap and get confused and all that in discussions about it. So I think it's important to have at least that distinction between the philosophers as philosophers, and then pagan, which when you use just the word alone, it has a much more explicitly religious sound to me. I don't, maybe
it does. I think so.
But you would also include, when you're saying philosopher, you're also including, or are you including in there people like Homer or Aeschylus, who are, I mean, they're writing plays or poems,
but they're pagans.
They're pagans, but they're not explicitly doing philosophy as we interpret it. But they're not like just priests of a pagan religion. Right. So I think when we're saying, why should we read the pagan classics, we're including the literature, the philosophy, all of the works from the pagans, really saying like, if it persisted from then until now, it's probably worth reading.
Right.
That's helpful.
Right. And I may have said, because didn't we do a session on, not faith and reason, on Athens and Jerusalem?
We did.
Okay, yeah, because some of the issues are the same here. And so like Chesterton makes the remark, if we're trying to figure out what is the relationship between Christianity and paganism in terms of of anything, Chesterton says paganism was a search. They were asking questions. And Christianity is the answer. That's the way he frames that they didn't have the right answers, but they were asking a lot of the right questions. Certainly, Plato and Aristotle, and Cicero, the pagan philosophers, were certainly doing that. And so that's, to me, that's the major analogy to use when I'm dealing with that question. But there are philosophers post Christ
who aren't Christians
that are still worth reading, because they're continuing this conversation of the questions that have been raised and trying to come to the answer. And you have this sort of confluence of ideas coming, where you've got the back to Athens and Jerusalem, the Hebrews and the Jews who it's been revealed to them, and then you've got the Greeks and the Romans that are going, we've got all these great questions, and now actually the only answer we can come to and get a full answer is in Christianity.
And Paul did his best to get around everywhere.
Yes, he did.
But communication was different.
Well,
then.
and I do think that event, Paul at the Areopagus, is a really, really key event in that whole narrative, right? Because in a sense, I'm trying to put together this banquet speech I'm going to be giving, and I was calling it not two cultures. I remember, but there's this thing, and it seems to, in a way, paganism and Christianity kind of come together right at that moment where he's talking to the philosophers in Athens, and he points to the tomb of the unknown god,
the altar.
Yeah, the altar of the unknown god, and he says, the God that he basically is making the case, the God you've been searching for, I'm preaching to you right now. And to me, that's kind of this coming together of these two streams right there in Paul talking to these Greek philosophers and quoting pagan poets in the process, right? So I think, to me, that is the great event in the whole Athens and Jerusalem dynamic. And
I agree.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
And he's quoting pagan poets. So he's appealing to pagan sources. Paul. So if you have a problem with that, you have a problem with Paul, right? If you're just taking this view that we should just never touch or quote or read these people.
Because Paul was educated.
Yes.
And before we get much further down the line, Martin, like you mentioned the distinction between pagans and secularists. I can't remember who it was. Somebody recently I heard say, like, I'd much rather, I think it was in the context of like paganism, like getting a new lease on life in Scandinavia sort of thing. And this is like a modern day apologist. Like, I'd much rather talk with one of them than a secularist, because at least they recognize the supernatural.
Well, and Lewis's whole remark that the pagans were like virgins and secularists are like divorcees.
Oh.
Because one is coming prior, one is it's not a rejection because it's prior.
That's right.
Yeah. And the other's coming after and is an explicit rejection of what has been revealed.
I think that's good. Just that, I think that's a good term, that the fact that the people that we do study in classical education, Aristotle and Plato and Cicero, that they didn't reject Christianity. It wasn't like they were opposed to it. It hadn't been revealed to them. And so I think that can be helpful for people.
And that doesn't mean that everything a pagan said was true or any of that, but they did come to a lot of truths. You know, we're made in the image of God, and we're given reason, which is a tool that has been put in us as created human creatures created in his image. And they used that, and they didn't rightly know where that came from, how that originated or anything. But they did have that in them, and because they were made in the image of God, they came to correct conclusions about a lot of things. In addition to, just like I said before, just knowing what the right questions to ask, because getting the right answer often is a function of asking the right question. And they ask a lot of the right questions. And so when they do come to truths, when they do answer them, sometimes they do correctly, they're truths. Are we just supposed to reject them just because they were uttered by a pagan? Don't think so.
Well, and that's a point I want to make sure that we hit, is that in the conversation we're having with regards to timeline, I think even somebody that, like, we can learn a truth from somebody who comes post Christ, who is not a believer, because those people can still utter a truth.
Sure. Because they are God created.
Yeah.
And they do have God created brains.
So just because there is a work that maybe we don't agree with, or does, it
could have truth in it.
It could have truth in it. It's written by an unbeliever, right? Like, that could still be something worth reading. And one of Cheryl's favorite questions in a Famous Men of Rome study guide was, what does it mean when it says in the Bible that Christ came in the fullness of time? Right? Because, and she explicitly wanted to link that to the Roman Empire and the way in which communication could happen, how you could quickly migrate from place to place, so Paul could actually get around because of the empire, and that that Christianity had to conquer one city, Rome, and all of a sudden it went out everywhere, right? And that was very much something that she thought about and considered, that, like, there's a reason why God came at the time he did.
It wasn't an accident.
And so for him to have revealed himself to Aristotle or Plato would not have fit in his plan.
Right.
But in a way, it's not an explicit revelation.
Oh, sure.
But I think I don't know what you call it, an implicit revelation.
Well, there's the
through
revelation,
our natural reason that's been given to us as human beings.
Yeah, through the natural world.
And you get to Aristotle, and for some of us, that's philosophy fully formed, really. And it's sort of baptized later on by thinkers like Thomas Aquinas and the medieval Christian philosophers, because they are quoting Aristotle explicitly, particularly Aristotle, as a proof for the truth of the things that they're saying, and they're directly taking it and using it in the furtherance of Christianity.
Well, and Thomas refers to Aristotle as the philosopher. He doesn't. He doesn't even name him. He's like, as the philosopher says.
And Aristotle's not the only one.
I think that's helpful that even the people that have been so influential to our faith didn't pit against each other the Christian doctrines as they knew them and the philosophers as they knew them. They didn't pit them together. And so I think that's helpful to know.
It's a fairly modern phenomenon to have this rejection of them, because even through the Reformation, there is a recognized acceptance of the classics.
Yeah, and there are these outbreaks, I would call them, of fideism, faith only.
Well, it was the medievals who copied all the classics.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, it was the monks who preserved it.
Mm-hmm. Right, we keep wanting to tear these things apart.
Right.
And the whole strength of Christianity is the fact that it took natural revelation as authoritative in some way, as obviously the medieval philosophers did. It's Islam that is fideist fundamentally, and they have tried to keep those two things apart. There were great Arab philosophers who were Islamic in the Middle Ages, and Aquinas quotes them.
Yeah, Averroes and Avicenna. Yeah.
But after that time, that becomes very unfashionable in Islam, and they are that tradition, that natural reason tradition in Islam is suppressed.
It exists. It's very, 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 very small.
Today
in their tradition, because there was a guy named Ibn al-Ghazali who writes The Folly of the Philosophers, and where Islam had a project of trying to bring together faith and reason as Christianity did, and what Ibn al-Ghazali basically makes the case is that's folly, and all you have to do is submit to the divine, and that's it. And so that's where there is an interesting dichotomy between Christianity and Islam, particularly in the way we look at trying to understand the natural world and whether that should have any sort of engagement with what we believe.
And that's the whole argument by people like Leo Strauss, who is known as a political philosopher, but he was a Jewish, and he makes that case that this faith, this tension, this dialectic between faith and reason is the energy that propels Western civilization forward. And it's why in countries that you see Christianity, where you have that dynamic, they have thrived in every way, whereas many Islamic countries have not, because they've kept those two things apart. You don't have that energy coming from that dialectic, doing those two things.
So when it comes to maybe blending some of the works of the pagans and our Christian beliefs, I have a case study, and this actually comes from questions I have gotten from our customers or maybe prospective customers. So say there is a family that discovers Memoria Press, and they have an elementary school age child, and they're looking through the book list for, let's say, 3rd or 4th grade, and they see our Delirious Greek Myths book. And I get the question from the parent, why would I do that? I totally support Bible stories, scripture memory. I want that in my home, but I do not want to teach my children about false gods. It's absolutely, I'm not at all putting down someone's convictions, but sometimes I get stuck on how to answer a question like that. Are the stories in the Greek mythology books just as helpful as Bible stories? Are they to be told in a different way? How would you?
They are told in a different way, because we teach mythology as fantasy, as fairy tales.
Story, yeah.
Right, but we teach the Bible as truth. Students don't compare that, or don't conflict those two things.
They don't get confused.
They do not. They know what fantasy is. They know a fairy tale. They know, they're silly stories. And like throwing people into the sky and they become a constellation. I mean, that's not
right. Or students Cronus eating his kids, and then his wife giving him a rock, and
he eats the rock instead, thinking it's Zeus.
And
so that's how Zeus.
And then eventually they get him to throw up all his kids, right? So how are they still alive?
It's just craziness.
It's very, very fanciful, very crazy. people turning into trees.
Yes.
Yeah, and
God's turning into bulls.
And we can look at those things. That whole belief system is dead today. It doesn't have. It's not
Right.
alive
So
in the
it's
way
not a
it was
threat
when
at
it was
all.
dangerous. Right? It's dead. And so we look upon those stories now as what we believe they ultimately were, which is just products of the human imagination. Okay?
Just
That
like
is
a fairy
good
tale.
point, though.
Just like a
And-
fairy tale.
Just like a fairy tale.
Yes.
Just like, what I liken them to most of all is tall tales. Right? Do we, by whatever argument that you have to use to reject the mythological stories, you have to reject tall tales, you have to reject fairy tales, you don't do that. Why not? And again, if you were living 2,000 years ago, it might be a different story because
That's
people
what I
really
was
believed in
I
that
think
kind of
that
stuff.
is a good point to make, is that the New Testament truly was fighting against pagan gods because it truly had to. I think a lot of the stipulations that Jesus gave were in rejection of polytheism and, the things that were going on, sacrifice, all of those things that were honestly, sacrifice was all through the Old Testament. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's me, it's not, just don't bring me your burnt offerings. And that's because he was trying to set up something that was in total opposition to every other church.
Yeah,
I
to
don't
us
know, what
today,
would you
they're
call
just
them?
Greek and Roman tall tales. Oh, they're
Yeah, well, and I think an important point here is that, like in Cicero's On the Nature of the Gods, they have an argument about, because it's the Epicureans and the Stoics arguing, and both of them are like, well, I mean, Epicureans a little less so, but the Stoics, who are much more in the philosophical line of Plato and Aristotle, they're like, the gods we're worshiping, we know those aren't the real gods. And for these reasons, right? But Cicero introduces the work with, we need to have this conversation because if we know that this isn't true, is it still worthwhile for us to do so and to keep the rituals in place? And his argument is yes, because they're afraid the bonds of justice would crumble if the bonds of religion crumble. And
Sounds like Jefferson.
And he probably got it from Cicero. But what's interesting about that is when people are worried about, well, my kid's going to learn the story and then start worshiping Zeus, the reality is even the Romans knew, and I don't have data to back up the Greeks, but I mean, Plato and Aristotle clearly don't they use the terms the gods because I think that's who he's talking to, but who they're talking to, but you can see that they're making points that don't fit with the polytheism of the day. And so, but clearly before Christ even comes, because we established this rose from before the time of Christ, they recognize that there's falsity here. And so that is another reason why I don't think it's very easy to see through it, even if you grew up in it and it's what your community is doing. It's easy for them to go, that can't be who the gods actually are.
But the bottom line is that doesn't present a danger to us today because
that's the thing is we're way beyond that. We are so far beyond it that there's nothing to be afraid of. It's not a threat. But now there are some students who are more sensitive, and some of those stories may be disturbing to them. And
there's a few fairy tales that are a little disturbing.
All fairy tales are disturbing.
I was going to say.
But if that's true, then there's nothing wrong with putting it off. There's nothing wrong with delaying it. But why do we do it? Because it helps us to understand Shakespeare, Homer, Virgil.
Because there's
Dante,
all those references there.
How would you ever read Dante without a knowledge of mythology? So if we want to get our students there, then they do really need to understand these stories eventually.
And they are valuable, those stories, because they really are creations of the human imagination. They're false, as Cicero says, but they're creations, and so just by virtue of that, they have some value because they are taking truths and they're trying to present those truths to not your intellect, but your imagination, just like all great literary things do. right? So just appreciate them for what they are. They're imaginative works of human beings, and they have a value there just because of that.
And when it comes to the practical side of it, teaching children, whether it's teaching them through the Greek myths book or even high schoolers who are like reading Dante, what is a good practical approach to that?
Well, I mean, I think teaching your kids using Delaire's Greek mythology, you're going to learn all those old stories that are being referred to. Not all of them, but a lot of them. There's I'm like I mentioned before, I'm reading Edith Hamilton's book Mythology, which has all those great ones in there. And there's when you read those kinds of things, there is this sort of deep significance to the characters and the events in these myths, and they make great analogies, right? Because an analogy is the best way to explain something, because an analogy is using a parallel thing that is more clear to you to explain some other parallel in real life that is not clear to you. You're learning from the clearer thing. So to use an example from one of these stories is always really the best way to explain something. Analogy is the best way of reasoning. And I say that as somebody who's, authored several logic texts. Okay.
Well, and doesn't God relate to us analogically?
Absolutely.
What do we know? He's a father. And Jesus is a lion. How do we understand?
Right, and the best parts of the Bible are the stories that are the whole story of the Jews, the story of Christ being crucified. It's all a story. This is the best way to know things. So use the stories that even the pagans have created stories that are good as story, not truths, but as stories.
But moving from mythology, I think we also need to talk about philosophy.
Right. Yes.
And they were before Christ, but what they did, what they discovered about humanity and about what it means to be virtuous and wise, and I mean, where would you beat that? They were brilliant. I mean, they really figured out so much stuff without any of they didn't have AI. I mean, they did they just figure it out in the forum, just hanging out, talking to each other?
Well, they did have AI.
Did they?
Authentic intelligence.
Yeah, Cheryl, her article about this is fantastic. And she talks about one of her final paragraphs. I'll just read a little bit of it. She says, "We're all Greeks when we come to God, searching, asking, debating, questioning, doubting, wondering. The Greeks are our guides because they asked all of the right questions, and asking the right questions is half the battle. They explored answers with depth and insight that is astounding. It was Cicero, building on his Greek inheritance, who led Augustine to Christ. It was Virgil, using Homer as his model, who led Dante up the gates of heaven. The pagan classics do the same for us." And she talks about how if the purpose of literature is to explore the human heart and the human condition, God's given us that, and he uses literature to help in our exploration of ourselves and our world, which I thought was beautiful.
Yeah, God uses even very imperfect things
and imperfect people
in preparing the way for certain things. And I think you can look back historically. Fulton Sheen says this, that the Greeks were a preparation. The fact that the Greeks had conquered all that area of the world was crucial. It's essential to the spread of Christianity. Then the Romans come, they take over from the Greeks. They learn a lot from the Greeks. They're different, but they learn a lot from the Greeks. And then it spreads because they build roads, and you can go from one city to the other very easily, and it's easier to get places. But the Greek conquest by Alexander really was one of the great events in Christian history.
And I think that's an helpful point, almost a note to end on, is the pagan works don't have the final word, but they do point us to it.
Right.
Certainly. And they're an incredibly foundational marker.
They were looking, they were searching, because they did have, as Pascal said, that God-sized heart, God-sized hole in their hearts, that we all were created by God. And we all have that innate desire for him.
To sharpen our understanding and lead us. And you read them with discernment? right?
Yes.
Yeah, of course you do.
Yes.
Just like anything.
Mhm.
I read recently something, I don't know what I was looking at, something that Cheryl wrote, and she said, for human wisdom, the Greeks. For divine wisdom, God.
I think she says part of that.
Oh, is it in there?
It might
Okay.
be in here. I think she
I
says
haven't
something
reread
like that.
but you know, all of her stuff is like we all do.
Mm-hmm.
I find it everywhere.
Well, but also you take pieces of things and you put them together into a whole, and that's what we're talking about, sort of on a grand
right.
scale, right?
Yeah.
We're taking pieces of what we know, whether it's from the pagans, whether it's from scripture, whether it's from, our local church community, whether it's going outside and seeing how the world is, and we're trying to put that together into a whole, right? And that's what Newman says in the idea of a university about the goal of a liberal arts education. Is one of the two goals is to know that the truth is one, like to fundamentally take that in and live that, because if you live that, then it doesn't matter where that truth is coming from. If it is in fact the truth, then I have to make that then concord with everything I know.
Yeah, and in that warning, you got to practice discernment when you're, reading non-Christian things. Actually, you have to exercise discernment even more when you're reading things that are labeled Christian,
Agreed.
because they're often mistaken. You have to read everything with discernment.
Yeah. And you have to
That's a
read
good point.
widely.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. You are better able to discern if you are widely read.
Let's go read.
I know. Great discussion. I definitely recommend the article by Cheryl. And I know that I mentioned before, she originally broke it up into 10 parts because she gives 10 reasons why we should read the pagans. And each one of those articles are really enriching, I think.
Yeah, well, they used to be much longer. So
You told
what
a
you
story
got
about that
here
before.
It's just a very condensed.
Yes.
So you're getting the highlights.
Yeah. Oh, well, great discussion, everybody. We will be back next time. And in the meantime, I hope I get a mailbox.
I do too. Come on, marketing.
Oh, thanks, everybody. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.